It is episode 10 of Mann's Cans. I'm actually in the double digits. It's time to celebrate. Whoa. This episode is going to cover DAPs that I own, which are digital audio players. A DAP will always have a DAC, but a DAC is not always a DAP. I mentioned that before. So I actually have two very expensive DAPs that I wouldn't recommend for somebody who's just getting into listening to music with higher fidelity, or somebody who doesn't really have super nice equipment. These are both Astell&Kern, the AK120 and the AK320. So the AK120 actually came out in 2014, and this came out I think in 2015 or 16. So when I do a direct optical output with these, the sound of the characteristics of these devices actually don't apply, because the Yggdrasil DAC is taking care of the sound quality when I output into my amps. So a lot of people will say, oh, I need a really high-end DAP so I can do optical output into my amplifier, but the amplifier will have its own DAC. When you do optical out, you need an external source that is getting input from this in order to translate that music into an analog signal. I got the Astell&Kern AK120 back in late 2014, and I actually got a good deal on this. This was like $1,200 when it first came out, and the guy was selling it for $500. And the moment I stuck my IEMs in my ears and played something with this, I was like, oh. And I asked the guy, why are you selling this for such a low price? And he said, oh, I like my iPhone. It works well enough. I don't notice a difference. And I was like, what the heck, you know? But I was both jealous and a little bit sad, because I was jealous that he couldn't tell the difference, because that means that he doesn't have to spend tons of money for his audio journey versus me. But the other thing that made me a little bit sad was that he wasn't able to enjoy a lot of those characteristics of sound that come from such a thing. So the AK120 actually has a little SD card slot. This has I think a 400 gig and a 128 gig micro SD card inside right now. So I have roughly 500 something gigabytes of music on here. Lucky me, right? What I do like about this is it is an extremely nice sounding DAP, but I will say that the bass is a little bit overemphasized. So depending on what device you are using it with, it can get a little bit muddy in the bass section, which kind of overflows into the lower mids before it reaches the pyramids. So the pyramids. It depends on what I'm playing it with. So when I use these for on the go on travel, and I almost always bring the AK120 with me. The reason being that I typically have the Campfire Audio Andromeda instead of my Campfire Audio Vega. So when I plug the Vega in, and it takes a little bit more power to run it, so I have to put the volume quite high when I'm using the Vega. So I mean, it can be really boomy and bassy, but I think it's a little bit more muddy than it needs to be. The Campfire Audio Andromeda doesn't have as much emphasis in the bass range, meaning that it balances out more evenly and nicely with the AK120. If I do go on travel with the Vega, I typically bring the AK320 with me. This has a completely different DAC than the DAC that's used on the AK120. The difference between the AK120 and the 320 for me sound-wise is that the 320 is definitely a lot more crisp. It's a lot more succinct with a faster response time compared to the 120. So I love the 120 for what it does, especially when used with the Andromeda. But if I have the Vega with me when I'm on travel, I always bring the AK320. The reason being, it has a better balance with the Vega. And I put this in with the Andromeda, and it sounds freaking amazing as well. But I like the portability and the battery power of the 120. So when I have Andromeda on this, the battery is at least 10 hours. If I'm on a 6-hour flight, the 120 just keeps plugging along. The 320, I think it has about a 6-hour, maybe 8-hour battery life. But once again, this is a much better, much more neutral sounding DAP compared to the 120. And it definitely sounds higher quality. And I like how precise it is. So what this is the AK380 AMP, AMP. And it's actually a portable amp that you attach onto the AK320 or the AK380, which is a much more expensive version of this. But you just attach it on like that, and then you screw it in. Then you screw it in like this. And so what happens is it recognizes that you've installed the amplifier. So it provides a lot higher output. So I would notice that if I was at 100 out of 110 on the volume with the Vega, I put in the amp and I'm at like 85, 90 for the same volume output. And also it does run the Vega a little bit better. I noticed that it does have higher output, but it also kind of tightens up the sound even a little bit more. It makes it a little bit more refined. And the treble is a little more clear and pristine, but it's very, very subtle. And I think for most people, they should be happy enough without the amp. Some of the drawbacks that I have with these is that the menus can be kind of clunky with AK. So when using this one, the screen is so small and it doesn't scroll the title completely. So say for example, I have an album, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. But what will happen is on the title list, it'll say Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Broadway cast recording, and then the title of the song. Well, all this will do is say Hedwig and the Angry ... and it won't list the song title. And it gets really frustrating because if I want to choose it, then I gotta press back, and then choose the actual song title on the title list. But then when I'm playing, it won't show exactly what the name of the song is. I hate that. The menu on here is much larger. There's a lot more screen space. So you don't have to worry about the title not scrolling all the way through. It's a lot easier to navigate with the larger screen, and it's a much better resolution. But in the end, if I'm on the go and I'm traveling, this is great because it's so light and it's so portable. But if I want a little more power and juice, or if I'm looking to impress somebody, I can just take this with me because it does sound much better. But I don't know how many people, unless you use audio equipment a lot, I'm not sure how much of a difference people would recognize from the 120 to the 320. I think, so maybe somebody would notice the 120 to the 320 sound characteristics and how different they are. You put the amp on, it takes a little more work to figure out what kind of changes are being made to the sound. So the new flagship that got released last year that replaced the AK380, and this is a 320, that new flagship is the SP1000. There are two versions of it. However, I already own these two and I'm really happy with them, so I didn't do the upgrade to the SP1000. And then in October last year, they had the step down version of the SP1000. It's a little bit smaller version and it's a portable edition of the SP1000. So the SP1000M is the new release that came out late last year, and it's a more portable version of the SP1000. So it's sort of like going from the AK380 to the 320. Rumor has it that come May this year, AK will come out with a new flagship DAP, which who knows how much better or refined it'll be versus going from the 320 or 380, let alone the SP1000. Come May, I might decide to get the new Astell&Kern DAP, but these do make me happy enough, so it'll be a really tough decision. Somebody who might be slightly happy enough with their cell phone, or they're curious about whether or not they notice differences. Say you're moving up into the audio journey, you want to go to a new tier without wasting and blowing $1,500 or $3,000 on DAP. I would not recommend that. What I would recommend is you get, say, a $200 DAP or a $400 DAP. Don't go above that. When it comes to looking for a new DAP, if you want a standalone music player, then I would recommend looking at other companies. Sony makes some good stuff, and FIO, F-I-I-O. FIO is a Chinese company. They make great amps and they make great DAPs, and they have very competitive prices with a lot of features available. When it comes to getting to this kind of level, there's always, there's going to be a change. It's just the return on investment thing, right? So say you have a $100 DAP, then you get a $300 DAP. The quality difference might be about this much, right? But then you have a $300 DAP and you get a $500 DAP, it'll be that much of a difference. Then you have a $500 DAP and a $2,000 DAP. Depending on the quality of the $500 one and the $2,000, the quality difference might be this much more significant. So there's, a discrepancy from the price that you pay for the product versus its quality output. So it's up to the individual to make a decision as to whether or not they feel they're getting their money's worth from the products that they purchase. So that's my episode on my DAPs and recommendations. We'll see if there's another episode. And until then, happy Lunar New Year. And go out and celebrate my 10th episode because I'm in the double digits now. Whoa.